Good evening, my fellow hunters, and welcome back to Bloodborne. Last time we made a further trek into the Forbidden Woods, and ended up encountering Valter, Master of the League, becoming one of his confederates. But we still have much more of the woods to explore, so let's try on a new armor set since the Black Church set has kind of wore out its welcome. This is the White Church set, worn by the doctors superior to the Black Garb doctors, who have a special interest in experimenting with blood on themselves and of others. But before we head back into the woods, let's spend all of our current blood echoes, just in case we should die and lose our chance to recover them.
Let the echoes become your strength. Let me stand close. Now shut your eyes.
As I mentioned previously, all levels for quite a while will be going into Blood Tinge for the future.
Farewell, good hunter.
But before we actually get back to exploring the woods, let's check up on our beggar friend that we met last time and sent to Yosefka's clinic. Let's see how he's doing in Yosefka's care.
Oh, hello. You're alive. Good. I've received another patient. This time, I'll be trying old blood. I've achieved much, and I owe it all to you. Take this as thanks. Custom made. And cheers to the discovery of kinship. Doesn't it make you feel warm inside? If you find any humans, bring them to me. I'm depending on you, brave hunter.
A bit of special dialogue if you choose to help Yosefka after discovering her secrets. Oh, hello, what's this hidden inside her clinic? This blobby thing certainly wasn't here last time we came. Seems regretful, almost. For killing it, we obtain a higher tier of the Beast Rune. For this was the beggar that we sent, turned into one of these weird alien creatures by Yosefka's experimentation. But what would have happened had we sent him to Odin Chapel instead of Yosefka's clinic? Seems someone has killed Adela, leaving behind her rune, the Odin Writhe. What have you to say about this beggar?
Ah, hello again. I owe this to you. It's a wonderful place. They even let beggars like myself in. What's better, we keep our distance. Don't step on anyone's toes, right? The way proper Yharnamites ought to live. Let me share something with you. My secret stash. Really prime stuff. Oh, hello again. I really do owe you a terrible lot. Finding me such a nice place to live. This is a smashing place. It's everything Yharnam ever had and more.
So after clearing the immediate vicinity of other enemies...
Have you got a screw loose? Or is it your animal intuition? You hunters have got more blood on your hands.
Turns out that the beggar is a beast, and not just any beast, but a spark-generating dark beast like Paul.
Die! 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 Hunters are killers, nothing less! You call me a beast? A beast? What would you know? I didn't ask for this. Fancy beasts, every last one of us.
So, the blobby thing we just recently killed was the beggar who we had sent here. But what about the blobby thing that we had killed the first time we came here, the one that was right here, and that dropped one of Yosefka's specially distilled blood vials? It hopefully shouldn't take too many neurons firing to realize that this blobby thing here was in fact the true Yosefka, and the one that we spoke to earlier has been an imposter. There's another hint at this if you pay especially close attention. If you angle the camera just right, you can glimpse a bit of Yosefka behind the door when you're speaking to her. Prior to killing Father Gascoigne, she has nothing in her hand, but after that she has a gun, indicating that by that point she has been replaced by the imposter. This also explains her sudden change of attitude after that point. Loose ends having been taken care of, let's get back to exploring the Forbidden Woods, beyond the point where we left off last time. Thankfully it takes no time at all to get back to there thanks to the shortcut that we unlocked. And as always, it's good form to send the elevator back up, should you die, that way you won't have to wait for it the next time. So, up until now I've gone through each area in a sensible manner, going through them in as straight of a shot as possible, with the only detours being side routes leading to dead ends and such. Unfortunately, that just isn't going to be possible with this area here, as it is a massive tangle of intertwining paths, dead ends, and trees blocking you at every turn. So if the area ends up being confusing and hard to understand, that's why. There's not really a good way to tackle this area. But in the meantime, let's say hello to our good old friend, the Executioner. At this point, they're not terribly threatening, as we've gotten even stronger while they really haven't, although that's no reason to get careless. Although as long as you can get off one properly timed stagger shot, you're good. And even if you use blood vials in killing them, they always drop a good stock, so they're always worth killing. Here we see a new enemy introduced in the Forbidden Woods, these large snake clusters. They're not terribly threatening if you can attack them from a distance or quick enough that they can't counterattack. But should you give them enough time to counterattack, they hit many times in a row and do a very large amount of damage, so you do have to be wary of them. As you can see, the rifle spear makes very short work of them. It is an excellent weapon for this area because of that, and also because of how effective it is at taking out these infested huntsmen. Attacking them at a distance with the long-distance charge attack is by far the safest method. Though this area is pretty well designed and very fun to run through, it's a bit samey to look at, so a lot of this footage is going to be sped up to reduce any potential tedium. And it will be slowed down anytime there is something new or unique on the screen. Although this area defies conventional mental mapping to a considerable degree, progression can be made manageable by dividing the area into 3 chunks that you'll explore. The first chunk being the right-hand portion of the area along the cliffside. What is making that noise? Oh, hello there. Say hi to the big brothers of these snake clumps that we've been fighting. These ones are considerably more dangerous. In addition to packing a pretty heavy-hitting poison ranged attack, their close-range spam with all their little snakeheads is far more damaging, and can very easily kill you in only 2 to 3 seconds if you're up close to them. However, as you saw there, they have trouble hitting to their sides and can't hit towards their backsides at all, so if you can manage to get around them, they're easily taken out. For traversing all this way to this little side area along the cliff is the Deep Sea Rune. This is the first of a series of runes, each imparting a resistance to a certain status effect, in this case slow poison. Appropriate for the area, but not too terribly helpful, since if you get hit enough to get poisoned by the enemies, you've probably been hit enough to have just lost all your HP and die anyway, so not the most helpful rune. The sound design in this game is excellent, to the surprise of no one who's watched this far, but I feel this area excels in that category even more so than any before it. Just all the loud slithering that occurs feels really threatening in a good way. But enough about that, because we got some company here. If you try to go for that item right away without paying attention to your surroundings, he's likely to come up from behind you and attack you, knocking you off this cliff into the unpleasant slithering below. Not a pleasant fate to be sure, but now that he's gone, let's have some fun with his buddies that he left behind here. If nothing else, this LP has taught me the joy of using shaman bone blades. Seriously, before doing this LP, I had never really used them all that much outside of a certain boss fight that we'll be seeing soon. And it's just crazy how effective they are at neutering certain tough encounters like this. But for getting past it, our reward is great, being the first bloodstone chunk that we can acquire, outside of some optional areas. These are the next tier of upgrade item, and will never appear in the blood of an ordinary foe. What this means in gameplay terms is that these things are rare as shit, so when you take an item beyond +6, you want to be sure it's something that you're going to use for a long time. Positioning in this game, as well as proper footing, is important to keep in mind at all times. Thankfully, things worked out for the best in this case, but normally the best way to handle this encounter is to simply lob Molotovs down at both of these snake balls until they're both dead. Oh, by the way, in case you're wondering, that is in fact the official name of these types of enemies. Snakeball and Large Snakeball, respectively. Yes, those are the official names given by FromSoft per the official strategy guide by Future Press. I guess they must have given the naming job to the intern on that day. But, for dealing with that rather tough encounter, we get a truly worthy reward. Another sea rune, this one imparting increased frenzy resistance. Although this won't be useful for now, when its day comes, you'll be glad it's there. Or I will, at least. So, at this point we've pretty much completely explored the right-hand chunk of the area. There's a bit we haven't seen yet, but we'll go over that later. So, for now, let's head backwards down through the central chunk, heading back to the start of this part of the area. Or at least attempt to. I'll be honest, I end up getting lost along the way. If you're trying to use this episode as a guide to get through the area, don't do that. Just go online and look up a map of the area. There are several great ones, either made by users or taken from the official strategy guide. So, whilst we make our way back to the beginning, let's talk about the rifle spear, shall we? Especially since I didn't get a chance to talk about it last episode. The rifle spear, as a spear, has its greatest strength in its reach. Being able to attack from outside an enemy's range is invaluable in this game, due to the high damage the enemies typically have. It is because of this fact that its greatest strength is its reach, that the transform moveset of the rifle spear, with the exception of the charged attack, is overall inferior to the untransformed moveset. The untransformed moveset consists entirely of pokes that makes the most out of the weapon's long length, whereas the transform moveset is closer slashes that have less range due to how the weapon is held when performed. Additionally, all of the thrusting attacks of the untransformed moveset have the piercing physical damage type, as opposed to the regular physical damage type that the slashes have. Generally speaking, piercing is the most valuable type of physical damage, as rarely do enemies resist it, and oftentimes there are enemies that are especially resistant to physical damage other than piercing, such as the few brain suckers we've encountered throughout the game so far. But at the end of the day, any deficiencies in the transform moveset are more than made up by its massively overpowered long-distance charging attack, as we've seen many times. At any rate, that aside, along the central path there's a bit of a gap that you can jump across. And it's very much worth doing this because there is a unique armor set located here. The mask up above and the rest of the set down below here for some reason. Mask of Doris, Graveguard of the Forbidden Woods. Willem kept 2 loyal servants back at Byrgenwerth. When they were sent into the labyrinth, they encountered the Eldritch Truth and went mad. One became the password gatekeeper, who we've seen before, while Doris became a Graveguard of the forest. Both remained loyal, even in their madness. Not the clearest of item descriptions, but something that will make sense in time. At any rate, heading back along the central path, but a bit more inward, there's a little drop here that's very much worth taking. More blobby things, this time in their natural environment. Although these ones are a bit more hostile, but not terribly threatening as they fall very quickly to thrust attacks. Still, one must wonder what they're doing here. Are they previous experiments of Yosefka's rejected into the forest to die? Or do they have some other source that we don't yet know about? Unfortunately, we don't really have any time for thought as we encounter a new, much more dangerous type of these blobby things. These ones with the tendrils appearing out of their heads are capable of powerful arcane arts that are extremely dangerous should they hit you. Although they are easy enough to take out, especially with thrust attacks, they can also easily take you out as they do massive amounts of damage with those magic spells. But the reward for coming here and killing them is great, as you receive the anti-clockwise metamorphosis rune, which boosts stamina by 10%, a pretty significant amount. As you can see there, the running R2 only did about a half to a third of what the R1 did. Again, owing to their high physical defense except for piercing. Continuing along here, we come to another sort of swampy area, thankfully one that's neither poisonous nor oiled. If you paid particularly close attention, you may actually recognize this as one of the areas I got a bit lost in before finding my way back to the central path. But here we are, come to it proper, and thus we start the left-hand, third, and final chunk of the forest, in the way that I've divided its progression. But before we actually continue along it to head towards the boss in a bit, let's check out this little side path here that may or may not be useful to you. Ta-da! A shortcut. This one leading to the building right before the shortcut all the way back to the first lantern in the area. I call this shortcut questionably useful because if you want to get back to the boss quickly, in my opinion it's quicker to use the first shortcut to get to the start of the final part of the woods and head along that way rather than taking this one, but that's just my opinion. But now that we've unlocked that shortcut for use, should we need it, let's start along the left-hand path, this swamp area. Yeah, it's not too exciting. It's kind of what you expect out of swamps. Do get a big fat pig that we can spit on our spear. Maybe we can roast it later for some delicious pork flesh. Or just some of its tasty, tasty blood. But if you pay special attention here, you notice this little side path underneath this big tree here. It's filled with all sorts of legless corpses that are pretty hard to hit due to the close-in camera. But if you can get enough distance and lock onto them, you can pretty easily take them out. Especially if you have Molotov cocktails, since even outside of oil they are especially weak to fire. Coming here is worthwhile, as you get another lake rune. This one increases bolt defense by 5%. Not the most amazing reward, but if you're having trouble against a bolt-using enemy, you could try equipping it. It might help you just barely survive against its attacks, potentially. But coming outside here, we have another big fat pig, and I'm sorry, I must apologize, but I do not end up fisting this pig. I know you're all upset. I did try to get off a stagger followed by a visceral attack, but there wasn't enough time to get the visceral attack. That's the main downside of this Ludwig's rifle here. It locks you into the ground so long after firing that unless you're right next to the enemy that you've just staggered, you won't have enough time to go forward and actually get off a visceral attack. That's why if I'm using a shotgun I prefer the blunderbuss, as its recovery time is considerably less, and why I prefer the pistols above shotguns even more, because they have virtually no recovery time after firing. But that pig, having been dealt with, will continue along here, near the end of the area. That direction is progress, so let's head back here along this path first and unlock what I think is the actually useful shortcut for getting to the boss of this area quickly. I stand by my previous assertion that these infested huntsmen can be kind of a bit bullshit. I just really don't think they should be capable of dealing quite that much damage in quite so quick of a time, especially considering of how common of an enemy they are in this area. If you don't have an attack good for cheesing them, they can be a real handful. But for killing him we get the Clockwise Metamorphosis rune. or rather the ability to pick it up without being harried. This one boosts HP and can also be useful. So, this path here leads back into the woods proper, so we're not going to take that. But the main reason to come to this bit, aside from getting that rune, is unlocking that gate. Although we did not do this, if you head along the right side of the area to the very end, you'll end up coming to a cliffside that you can drop down to, which will lead you into this area here. Now that we've unlocked the gate, we can proceed forward and make it to the end of the area without having to go through that long, swampy bit along the left side of the area. In my experience, this is quicker than using the second shortcut that we unlocked earlier, but your mileage may vary. I suppose that could still serve some use if you die in the swamp bit. But here we are, come to one of the more obvious boss rooms in the game so far. So, best to stock up if you're not prepared and brace yourself for the Shadows of Yharnam. 3 ring wraith looking motherfuckers, each with a different gear setup. One wielding only a katana, one wielding a katana and a candle, and the last wielding fire magic. The 2 with katanas will rush you immediately, while the flame-wielding one will harry you with spells at a distance. This can be a tricky fight because you have to pay close attention to all 3 to avoid being blindsided while you're concentrating on 1 or 2 of them. But at the same time, you also have to be aware enough to attack them when you get your chance. Otherwise, you're just going to be dodging them forever. You can, however, make the fight considerably easier by exploiting the fact that shaman bone blades work on them. Unfortunately here, I chose a poor target. The magic using one is quite dodgy and thus was able to avoid the attacks of the others while the blade's effect wore off, it only lasting about 15 seconds after all. A better choice would be one of the 2 melee ones. They would then likely end up getting close to killing each other as they attempt to go after you. But even without the Shaman Bone Blade, this fight can be managed with smart thinking and quick reactions to what these shadows are doing. They are highly vulnerable to being staggered, so that is also a useful tactic, taking up a huge portion of their health. Now, when you do enough damage to them combined, they end up doing that. Turns out the huntsmen aren't the only ones infested with snakes here. In addition to making them look considerably creepier, it makes the 2 katana-wielding shadows far more dangerous, which is why I recommend taking one of them out as your first priority rather than the spellcaster. I attempt to show it off here, but this one just does nothing but spam his candle breath in short-range melee attacks, but the katana ones are especially dangerous because they gain extra length, the snakes stretching out their attack range by a considerable amount, with either a poking attack or a wide-range slashing attack, thus forcing you to stay close to them. But as long as there's only 1 katana-wielding shadow alive, it's pretty manageable. Especially since you can use the stone pillar in the middle here to block the magic casting shadow's spells, as long as you keep him on the other side of it from you. As you may expect, the difficulty of this fight is completely nerfed if you decide to bring a summon or 2 along. So if you're having trouble with them, that's a pretty good strategy if you don't mind doing that sort of thing. Otherwise, it's just a matter of learning their patterns and when you can get in safe hits. And if you can learn to reliably stagger and visceral attack them, then all the better. Now, taking out 2 of the shadows, you may think that the last one would be completely pathetic, and you'd be mistaken. The last one, regardless of which it is, gains the ability to summon those giant snakes that thrash around the arena and do a considerable amount of damage. The only way to avoid them is to dodge around like mad or block them with the large pillar in the middle. but as long as you stay on the last one, it can still be pretty easily taken out. Just don't let it get to a distance and cast that spell, and you're good. Good job, team. We beat the Shadows of Yharnam. And for doing so, we received the valuable Blood Rapture rune. If you like performing visceral attacks, this is the rune for you, as in addition to recovering all of your rallying health, it will restore an additional 200 hit points, letting you top off your health. An alternate means of healing to the blood vials. And a rather evocative description that again makes no sense, but will later, once more knowledge is obtained. Now, normally this is where the episode would end, but let's head on a bit further here into the very deepest reaches of the woods, and see what lies there. Oh god, it's a Jeff Goldblum. He seems rather ticked off with us. I guess his movie must not have done so well in these parts, and he's taking out his anger on us. Thankfully he's not too terribly threatening. But lying beyond his corpse, if we were actually heading in the proper direction, sorry I got turned around here. Heading down along this path, past his corpse, to its ultimate conclusion. At last, we've made it to the old, abandoned, secluded College of Byrgenwerth, the birthplace of the healing church and the source of their special healing blood. Next time, answers at long last.